following program is brought to you in living color on...
Hey everybody, it's Dan Felta, State Senate Majority Leader, former legal aid attorney, and today just filed the paperwork to run for governor against Chris Sununu, who's seeking a third term, and he's holding New Hampshire back from everything we believe in. Look, we got to win this race. We have the highest healthcare costs in the nation under Chris Sununu. We have the second worst opioid epidemic in the nation under Chris Sununu. We have the sixth highest unemployment rate in the nation under Chris Sununu. He has vetoed everything to help ordinary people and working families and working people, and my entire life has been geared to that. My dad worked in a furniture factory for 45 years. Same one, on air conditioned, doing the same job day in and day out. My mom, part-time jobs, including the night shift while raising 4 kids, and right out of law school. And I worked as a corporate attorney, I worked as a legal aid attorney, fighting for ordinary people all throughout New Hampshire, battling against Wall Street banks who were foreclosing on people during the last economic crisis, helping people get the relief and recovery effort they needed. That is distinctly different from the current governor, who looks out for corporate special interests, gives out no-bid contracts and relief money to corporate donors. We need a change. We need that change this fall. I am so honored to run to be your next governor. I look forward to earning your vote. We're going to have a Facebook Live rally at 5 p.m. today, so I look forward to maybe you joining us, and thank you so much for all that you do.
Hey everyone, Andrew Valinsky here, encouraging everyone to wear a mask when they go out in public, and I'd like to see the state issue infrared thermometers to grocery stores and other places and take the temperatures of every state employee required to work. We need to limit this spread. Learn more at ValinskyNH.com. Thanks.
Manchester, I'm State Representative Heidi Hamer. I represent Ward 10 in Manchester, District 17, Hillsborough. I first want to thank John Hopwood, for the regular host of the show, Ward 13, for allowing us to use his show this week. We will introduce 2 Democratic candidates for governor this year. Dan Feltus and Andrew Valinsky will be on the primary ballot September 8th. I am privileged to introduce you to Senator Dan Feltus. Dan has represented Concord's District 15 since 2014. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Heidi. It's great to be here with you.
Tell us, Dan, why are you running and how do you differ from our current governor?
Well, look, Heidi, we have to get out of this mess in a way that looks out for working people and working families. And that's who I am, that's where I come from, that's what I've done my entire life. My dad worked in a furniture factory for 45 years, the same one doing roughly the same job day in and day out in an un-air-conditioned furniture factory. Fortunately, steelworker organized for decent pay and benefits. My mom, she did part-time jobs, including the night shift, while raising 4 kids. And right out of law school, I served as a legal aid attorney with New Hampshire Legal Assistance, representing low to middle income granted staters, senior citizens, fighting for veterans who have fought for us for the VA benefits they earned, they're entitled to, helping to lift people up as best I could, including during the last economic crisis, the Great Recession, battling Wall Street banks who were foreclosing on folks all around New Hampshire, helping with unemployment insurance and job training, helping to lift people up and get out of that mess, seeing a lot of the same people falling through the cracks now that fell through the cracks then. In the state Senate, Heidi, every step of the way, fighting for working people and working families. We've made a lot of progress working together. Medicaid expansion reauthorization, prescription drug relief, initiatives that you and I have worked on together to expand opportunity and healthcare access for granted staters, but all too often, We ran up against the same roadblock. 77 vetoes from Governor Chris Sununu, 60 of them bipartisan support, and calls himself, in his words, a Trump guy through and through, unquote. That's not my words. Those are Governor Chris Sununu's words. And I have a distinctly different background. My dad wasn't governor. My brother wasn't a U.S. senator. I was never gifted a ski resort. I've always been looking out for working people and working families. And if we're going to get out of this mess, Heidi, we got to look out for working people again. We can't be doing the kinds of things that Sununu has argued that we should do. Corporate immunity for big corporations who put their workers at risk in COVID-19. Not doing a school reopening plan. No public health standards and no support for our schools from Chris Sununu. He just punted it all down to the local level. That's not leadership. People expect leadership, strong leadership right now. That's what we need. Leadership that looks out for working people and working families. That's why I'm running. If I have the honor and privilege of serving as your next governor, each and every day I go into that corner office, I will fight for working people and working families every step of the way. When we replace Chris Sununu with some legal aid lawyer from the south end of Concord, I respectfully ask for your vote and your support. We've got to win this if we're going to really get out of this mess in a way that looks out for ordinary people.
Thank you. You know, certainly the biggest challenge we face right now is the pandemic. So do you think we should have a mask mandate?
Yes, I mean, we're the last state in New England that has any public mask requirement. I think a common sense public mask requirement is in order. I mean, it's one thing if you're out walking your dog by yourself in your neighborhood. It's another thing if you're in a public space, a place of public accommodation, like a grocery store or at a public event. You certainly should be wearing a mask. The science is clear. Masks prevent the spread. And it's a common sense public health initiative that Governor Chris Sununu has yet to do. And even in advance of the NASCAR race, didn't do it. In advance of Bike Week, didn't do it. And every step of the way, he's been looking out for the same kind of politics that Donald Trump has been engaging in. And he didn't issue a public health order for Donald Trump's rally that was going to happen on the Seacoast. So every step of the way, when he says he's a Trump guy through and through, you better believe it, because every step of the way, he's acting like it. And, we need something different. We need to look out for public health. We need a plan. We need to work with our schools. Look, so many people are going through this right now. It's so uncertain right now. And all that teachers and students and folks on the ground wanted was some semblance of certainty and support in public safety and public health going into the school year. Chris Sununu provided none of it. He just threw up his hands and said it's all on you at the local level. I'm of that fundamental belief we are all in this together, not you're on your own, not the Chris Sununu approach. My family, my wonderful wife Erin, our two amazing daughters, Iris and Josie, it's about our collective future, and we all are in this together.
Yeah, not much direction was given by our current governor and education commission about opening up the schools. And sounds like, you would have done it differently and safer.
Absolutely.
Safer.
Yeah, absolutely, Heidi.
Thank you.
And we put out what we call the Live Free and Learn Safe plan, a comprehensive public health plan for our schools, actual public health standards, and real support for our schools. And I'll just go over a few elements of what were in there. First and foremost, treating our teachers with respect. The average teacher spends $423 out of pocket each year on school supplies to do their own job. They shouldn't be spending money out of pocket to be safe in schools right now. So under the plan, we provide medical grade N95 masks to every teacher in the state. We provide 5 reusable cloth face coverings for every student in the state. That's something North Carolina did. If North Carolina can do it, certainly New Hampshire can do it. We require masks, middle school, high school, and use on buses. And we lay out clear guidance on what happens with buses, with meals, and what happens when a kid gets sick. Look, this is important. I mean, you cannot just let this happen in real time on the ground. If a kid gets sick, there should not be a debate in real time between teachers and parents and folks at the local level. This is a public health issue. And it requires leadership at the state level to stand up and say, here's what we're going to do. And Trump said it's not his responsibility. And Chris Sununu threw up his hands and he punted it to the local level without any financial support either. And, we provide in this Live Free and Learn Safe plan $100 million in CARES Act money to make sure that we take care of our schools. Maine just provided $165 million to support their schools, the HVAC systems, the upgrades, the plexiglass, the masks that all are needed, cleaning supplies, etc., that are a burden on our schools and a burden on property taxpayers. And if we want to support our schools, we want to support property taxpayers, and we want to support working families and our business community who want the certainty too, who have employees, who have kids in school. If we want to move our economy and our state forward in a way that's healthy and safe and with safe communities, there needs to be a statewide plan with public health standards and support. Chris Sununu failed to do his job.
Thank you. Supporting small businesses, what would you be suggesting to do for that during this pandemic?
Thank you, Heidi. A number of things. First, I think we ought to be supporting our small business community with free PPE. And that's legislation that you and I and others worked on at the State House. House Bill 1166 would have provided free PPE to small businesses in the Granite State. It used to be that for a while there that businesses could get PPE through the state. Governor Chris Sununu took that away. He put all the PPE at the liquor stores, and you had to go and buy it at cost. And those small business owners shouldn't be competing with healthcare providers and with everybody else who's scrambling for PPE. The small business owners ought to be supported with PPE. They also ought to be supported, and by the way, Governor Chris Sununu vetoed our bill to support small businesses with PPE. Small businesses also need to be provided with support with job training and linking up with employees right now. It's more important now than ever that happens, that we match up our workforce with the available jobs, small business owners. So part of that legislation also waived the cost sharing for small businesses for the public-private partnership and job training and skills matching. And Chris Sununu vetoed that too. So those are just two concrete ways that we can support our small business community. But the overarching thing here, Heidi, is by supporting our small businesses and supporting workers, we are actually supporting public safety, because worker safety is public safety. And on top of that, a critical thing that we need to do and finally move forward on, something I've led on, you've worked on, Heidi, is paid family and medical leave insurance. It's all too often, it's only the big corporations that are able to provide it. And small businesses lose out, and their workers lose out. And it's a critical element to how we move New Hampshire forward. For working families, families with a new kid, Aaron and I were fortunate with Iris and Josie that we were at a session with both Iris and Josie, and Aaron had access to paid family leave. That's not the case for most Granite Staters. And on top of that, it's not just about that. It's about three other things that paid family and medical leave is so important for. Combating our opioid epidemic. The number one cited reason why people do not get into intensive inpatient services is the absence of paid family and medical leave. Our caretaking crisis, caring for seniors and grandparents who may be in hospice. And finally, COVID-19. If paid family and medical leave insurance was in place when this COVID-19 thing hit us, there'd be so much more economic, social, and healthcare security for our families. Chris Sununu not only vetoed paid family and medical leave insurance, my bill last year, he actually auctioned off a copy of the veto at a partisan political fundraiser to the highest bidder. And not only that, auctioned off the U.S. flag and the New Hampshire flag, flown over the State House the day he vetoed paid family leave. So make no mistake, folks, Chris Sununu does not support paid family and medical leave insurance, despite what he says around election time. So that's critical to supporting our small businesses as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Paid family leave was a big one for me too. I took care of my mother years ago, and I was able to take off from work, but
yeah,
I've fought for this too.
Absolutely.
So, here in New Hampshire, taking the pledge against broad-based tax has been important, and there seems to be a difference between you and your opponent. Can you tell me more?
Sure. Well, I don't support a broad-based income or sales tax. And look, the reality is that working folks are already struggling imposing a broad-based income tax on them, I don't think is fair to teachers and nurses and plumbers and carpenters and people on the ground. You know what is fair? Doing, Heidi, what we did in the last budget and continuing down that road. In that last budget, we closed loopholes for big multi-state, multinational corporations to secure $140 million in new public school education funding for our communities, relieving pressure on property taxpayers. There are a whole bunch more loopholes for people at the top and big corporations at the top. And look, I think those folks at the top and those big corporations should pay their fair share before middle-class Granite Staters take it on the chin even more. And they're taking it on the chin in property taxes. So we need to secure even more progressive budgeting to close those loopholes, to invest in our communities, invest in education, and make sure that we relieve pressure on property taxes. In addition to that, I happen to believe the best investments we can make as a society and the investments we make in our kids. They're Iris and Josie's future, my daughters, our daughters. They're all of our daughters. They're all of our sons. They're our collective future, and they deserve a foundation for success and opportunity that's as strong as the granite under our soil. This is about building a bigger and better and brighter future for them and all of us, and taking care of them and giving them the opportunity they need. And so you've led on this. Manchester itself got about $20 million in additional support in that last budget, and I appreciate your leadership in helping to do that. We need to protect that budget and then build off of it. And that's what's at stake in this election. You may recall that Chris Sununu, after vetoing the budget, wanting the education funding out that we just talked about, he ended up accepting the budget. Not only that, well, he had to accept it, and then he went around with these big, large, oversized checks to try to take credit for it. And then right after doing that, he wrote a letter to superintendents of schools saying, I consider that one-time spending, don't make any long-term plans. So look, he's all over the place on this.
Yeah.
But the reality is he called our budget the Ferrari of public school education budget. I don't think anybody on the ground thinks it's a Ferrari. And we need to support public school by closing more of those loopholes for those at the top and big corporations to invest in our communities, invest in our people, our kids, and relieve pressure on property taxes.
Thank you. Senator, what would your top priorities be as governor?
Well, first and foremost,
I know we've talked a lot, about different things so far, but
yeah, I appreciate that. First and foremost, we have got to get out of this mess in a way that looks out for ordinary people. And the biggest thing on the horizon is just healthcare generally. Access to affordable, quality healthcare across the spectrum. Reproductive health care, paid family and medical leave insurance, emphasizing the medical, making sure that behavioral health crisis is dealt with and COVID-19 is dealt with. And just taking the latter issue for an example, we all work together on legislation to help with our nursing homes and health care of our nursing home residents. Chris Sununu vetoed it. We have amongst the worst in the nation COVID-19 crisis in our nursing homes. Over 300 Granite State seniors have been lost to COVID-19. A lot of whom right here in Manchester. And as a legal aid lawyer, I used to represent folks in nursing homes. They're among our most vulnerable, and the true reflection of a society, it's been said, is how a society treats its most vulnerable. And the failure to protect under Governor Sununu nursing home residents has been, in my view, unconscionable. And then vetoing our legislation to help plan, to help support nursing homes, and to do an independent review of what happened with recommendations for a second wave, that's a failure to plan. And so healthcare across the board is absolutely critical. One other piece on the COVID-19. We passed legislation waiving the cost sharing for COVID-19 testing and treatment to make sure everybody has access to healthcare on COVID-19. That's a public health issue. It's not just the right thing to do, it's a public health issue for all of us. And that was vetoed by Governor Chris Sununu. So when I say the singular obstacle to meaningful and inclusive and bipartisan progress in the state of New Hampshire is Chris Sununu, I mean it. 77 bills and counting, 60 of which had bipartisan support. And he even went in, you may recall, Heidi, to the Republican caucus on veto override last year and said, your vote on veto override, it's not about the issues or your constituents. It's about me and protecting my veto. That's not public service. That's the antithesis of public service. That's not why you should get into this. And that's Washington, D.C. style politics coming straight to Concord, brought to you by the Sununu family.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Senator, for the viewers? I mean, you've talked quite a bit and very good points.
Well, thank you, Heidi.
Plug it away.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who's listening. These are incredibly uncertain times. What should be certain is strong leadership to help you and your family and our communities and our schools. We're not seeing it from Governor Chris Sununu. Yes, he does better at press conferences than Donald Trump, who he calls, in his own words, he's a Trump guy through and through. But that's not enough. Press conferences and photo ops are not enough. Leadership is required right now. Not everybody's going to get everything right. But my life and my experience has taught me that looking out nonstop with the laser beam, helping local families, working people, working families, that's what this is all about to me. Lifting people up, not tearing people down. Fight to include more people in our democracy and economy, not exclude them. And work for a relief and recovery effort that works for everybody, not just those at the top. If I have the honor and privilege of serving as your next governor, each and every day I walk into that office, that's my guidepost. That's who I'm going to fight for. I'm going to fight for working people and working families. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you, Senator Dan Feltes, for your time today. And good luck on September 8th.
Thank you very much.
And now we will take a short break and come back with Connie Van Houten, Representative Connie Van Houten, who will interview Executive Council member Andrew Volinsky, running also for governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, thanks everyone for coming out. This is a day. Let's just pause for a moment. A bunch of us bicycled in from East Concord. Let me first say why we do that. This is the third time I've filed for office, and each time I've ridden in part, it's to make a statement about the environment and climate change. And in part, it's to commemorate how I first came to New Hampshire, which was on a bicycle, riding across the Kang. So that's why we do that. So let me say a few things. We are in uncertain times. We have a COVID-19 pandemic. We have an economic crisis. And we have racial injustice roiling to the surface in a way that focuses our attention. This is a time for strong leadership. We can make it through this time. We can build a New Hampshire in which everyone shares in our prosperity, in which the quality of schools no longer depends on your zip code, and we make great strides to to deal with racial injustice. In order to do that, we will all have to sacrifice. But I am convinced that if we make those sacrifices, we can build a granite state that leaves no one behind. We're facing the COVID emergency, but we cannot forget the emergency of climate change. Amy and I are parents and grandparents, and we worry about the future we're leaving our children and our grandchildren. The time for half measures is gone. That is why I so strongly oppose the Granite Ridge frack gas pipeline. That is why I will not take Liberty Utilities' money. We cannot let fossil fuel companies buy our future. We cannot stand up to the governor if we don't make a contrast by rejecting the fossil fuel money he so covets. Let me say one last thing. I think the job of the state is to create economic opportunity, and the best investment to make is in education. Many of you know that we have worked very hard to improve the quality of education and to address how unfairly we fund it. The two are linked. Quality of education, how we pay for it, we have to do both well. And for decades, political leaders have taken a false pledge that ties us to the past rather than allowing us to look to the future. New Hampshire, more than any other state, depends on the local property tax to raise money. New Hampshire has among the highest property taxes in the nation. Coming out of the recession of 2008, those 3 years resulted in an increase in property taxes of $290 million. The state balanced its budget on the back of property taxpayers. In the last 3 years, the growth, the increase in property taxes under Chris Sununu has been even more. Even though we bailed out Wall Street, we ignored working families and instead balanced our state budget on their backs. And so I will not take a failed pledge. My pledge, and we're putting it in writing, is right here. If I am elected governor, I will not balance the state's budget on the back of property taxpayers. Instead, we will reduce the local property tax for the majority of New Hampshire residents. And I am willing to put my signature
Manchester, we've made a little bit of a switch. You'll see that I'm no longer Heidi Hamer. I am now State Representative Connie Van Houten. I currently represent District 45, which is wards 10, 11, and 12 along the west side, and I'm in my second term as a representative of that district. We continue our theme of meeting the candidates today. We are currently waiting for a phone call from Executive Counselor Andrew Volinsky. It is my understanding that Andy has been involved with the Executive Council today and that the meeting has gone a little bit long, so we're waiting for that phone call to come in. In the interim, perhaps we should talk a little bit about what's going on in the registration format. Heidi, would you be willing to talk about it this time, or do you want to wait? I do have Heidi on set. I will clarify one point for you. The two of us are socially distanced, and being on set in the studio, I believe, is totally acceptable within that format. However, we both remain masked. We are both committed to the idea that COVID-19 is an a pandemic. It's even more than an epidemic that needs to be harnessed. And every little bit that we can do as individuals will help to take care of the multitudes. So while we wait for the phone call, I wasn't going to do this, but I've put Heidi on the spot. While we wait for the phone, I'm going to stop. I believe I have the phone call coming in. Brendan, am I good to go?
Yep, just press the button once, wait 1 second, say hello.
Hello?
Say hello one more time.
Hello?
Hi, it's Andy Valinsky.
Hi, Andy. It's Connie Van Houten. Let me give you a quick little introduction, and then we'll talk. Andrew Valinsky is the way I probably should refer to him. He's an executive council member representing Council District 2 since 2017.
2.
Yes, Council District 2. I apologize for that. Since 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
All right,
June of
perfect.
2017.
Now, have we caught you off guard? Are you coming out of an executive council meeting at this moment, or are you good to go?
I'm good to go, but your phone is coming in and out on me.
Okay, I'll move a little closer to the microphone. I am wearing a mask, and I think perhaps that's making a difference. Is this better?
This is better. I was losing part of what you were saying.
Perfect.
Sorry.
It's really a pleasure to kind of see you today, Andy, and to be able to talk to you. I think I'll start with a question that everybody is probably asking you right off the bat anyway.
Connie, I can't hear most of what you're saying. It's bad.
Sure.
coverage.
Let me give you your reign. Tell us what you'd like us to know about you.
I couldn't even hear that question. Can you? I can't hear you.
Okay, I made a technical adjustment. Is that any better?
Every other word.
I apologize for that. I am in the studio and trying to do what I can. How's this?
A little better.
I'm sure this doesn't make for great television, but Andy, why don't we do this? If you can hear what I'm saying right now, let me just give you an opportunity to speak for yourself as to who you are and why you are running.
Okay, so I am Andrew Valinsky. I'm running for governor. Many people will know that I was the Claremont School funding lawyer, and I led a team of volunteers who exposed just how unfairly our schools are funded and then how that undermines quality education for so many children in our state. Not only did we expose the problem, we convinced the Supreme Court to recognize for the first time in New Hampshire history the constitutional right to a state-funded public education. Those were bold ideas, but for lack of courageous leadership, we never really fulfilled the promise of those Claremont cases. I am running for governor to fulfill those promises. For the children in school, for the taxpayers who deserve fairness, for the seniors who are desperately trying to stay in their homes and are afraid of being taxed out of them, for the young and working families that are trying to get into homes. All of those people deserve a fair tax system that works for New Hampshire. That's why I'm running. And a lot of this, quite frankly, is my own personal experience. I grew up in a mill town where the mill failed. My dad was a mechanic, maintenance man, and a union shop steward. My mother was a homemaker. I'm the only one in my family to have gone to college. I went on scholarship. I paid for law school by working as a carpenter. I understand the benefit of educational opportunity. It's a question of economic justice. And my experience both in Claremont and in my own life and understanding the importance of education lead me to the conclusion that New Hampshire is being held back. I will never take the pledge. The pledge is promised to fail, and we need to succeed. What we've been doing is not sustainable, and I am running to really advance our state in terms of education and all of the other important things that a state should do.
Well, thank you, Andy. As you know, education is a prime concern of mine, and I would just like to add to what you said. I would not be sitting here today, probably, at least in the state legislature today, were it not for education. My family background was one that did not predispose us to go into college, and like you, I understand the importance of education. Are you able to hear me at this point?
Yes. This is
Perfect.
better.
And I apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. For those of you just turning in, I have Executive Counselor Andrew Volinsky on a remote connection, and we have just talked a bit about why he's running for governor. And I'd like to switch gears a bit. Obviously, something on most people's minds right now is the pandemic. It is paramount in many minds, and there are certainly very big challenges that we face. Let me ask you a few questions related to that. Let's start with the obvious one. How do you feel about having a mask mandate in the state of New Hampshire?
We should have a mask mandate. I confronted Sununu about this at the very beginning of April, asking him to use an emergency order to put a mask mandate in place. Sununu told me public health data did not support the effectiveness of wearing a mask. Sununu was dead wrong. We should do it.
Another question related to that. Obviously, there are many people across the spectrum who are being impacted greatly by this pandemic. Small business in particular is taking quite a bit of a hit. What do you think should be done to better support small businesses in New Hampshire?
I missed most of your question.
Okay, I'll try again.
Sorry.
Small business, how do we better support them in the global pandemic?
How are we going to support global small business in New Hampshire during the pandemic?
That's it.
We need to do a few things. First, businesses pay twice as much in business taxes. Businesses pay twice as much in property taxes they pay in business taxes. So if we bring the property tax under control, we help businesses. That's number one. Number two, we need to make big advances on broadband to encourage the economic development of businesses, new businesses, expansion of existing businesses. We need to treat broadband as a utility so that the companies that have the franchises are required to provide acceptable services to everyone within their franchise. We need to get our arms around electricity rates. A lot of that involves using renewable energy and making that a Hampshire business priority. We need to have more and better educated employees to staff our businesses. This includes improving K-12 education broadly across the state and making community college as inexpensive and in some instances free as best we can. We also need to figure out opportunities to help businesses pay for health care. That's an important aspect of running a business on the HR side. There are some things that New Hampshire can do to make that more available to businesses, and that would give us a real New Hampshire advantage.
It's obvious that there are many facets to how we can work with this global pandemic in the legislature, and you've touched upon one that, again, is kind of near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of controversy across the state as to how we should open schools, whether we should remotely open them, whether we should open on-site, whether there should be a hybrid model. And remarkably, there's not much guidance from the Office of the Governor or from the Commissioner of Education. What would be your recommendation going forward?
Well, we're losing options. So if we had planned for opening when we should have planned, which would have been late spring, early summer, we could have had a range of options. We could have made sure that schools that needed resources got those resources for things like air exchange systems, for outdoor facilities, for additional staffing. But because Sununu and Edelblue were more interested in listening to Betsy DeVos than in the New Hampshire task force, nothing's been done. All of the districts basically have been left on their own, stranded without guidance or assistance from the state. So where I am right now, I'm having a hard time picturing how in most of the state we can open at the beginning of September. I'm not 100% there yet, but for the safety of the children and the school personnel, I'm starting to think more and more that we have to be mostly remote, maybe hybrid through October as we assess the advancement of the virus and our ability to cobble together the resources that are necessary. And let me mention one of the things near and dear to my heart, having worked so hard on education and having a son who's a middle school science teacher. I hate to think about this, but by emergency order, the governor should immediately create a presumption that if any teacher or other school personnel gets sick with COVID while schools are open, they are presumed to have caught it at work and entitled to workers' comp and, God forbid, death benefits.
It does seem as though there's so much going forward that we don't understand, that we don't know, and I agree with you. Planning for safety is a daunting responsibility, and it's a responsibility that you, should you become governor, will have a great role to play in it. And we, Heidi Hamer is on set with me right now, that we as members of the legislature will be looking to support the governor in, and we look forward to guidance for that. And we look forward, of course, to a day when schools can open as they have in the past, to when social emotional learning can also be brought to the table as opposed to remotely brought into homes. You mentioned education, and I do have a few more seconds here. Education funding. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? I think many of us know that you have a very deeply entrenched idea for how to do that appropriately, and I'm aware of your stick. And
well, I don't know about deeply entrenched.
I know, probably word choice not correct. I apologize.
I know more about school funding than anyone who's ever run for governor, and we put that knowledge to use. So New Hampshire relies more heavily. We are worst in the nation in relying on local property taxes to pay for our schools. That means that you have a quilt of funding from one community to the next to the next. Manchester spends the least on its children of any school district in the state by thousands of dollars below the average. And Manchester is the most diverse community with a significant percentage of children on free and reduced lunch, which means Manchester has high costs yet spends the least. That is a terrible combination. So we need to have what I call the adult conversation of what are the options to get us off the over-reliance on the property tax. And for me, that means all options need to be on the table. Our goal needs to be to reduce property taxes for the majority of New Hampshire citizens, to improve school funding where it is the lowest, and to improve school quality where it is of the lowest quality. That's what I'm about. And using the bully pulpit as governor, I would push for the legislature to put together a package that meets those goals.
Thank you. Andy, when it's all said and done, assuming that you are able to become governor, what do you expect to be your top priorities, and what do you expect you'd be able to accomplish after a term or perhaps a few more years at the corner office?
So if I am fortunate enough to become governor, I will be taking office during a multi-headed crisis. There's the pandemic, there's economics, there's climate change, we can't forget that. and there's racial injustice crises all happening at the same time. And as governor, you need to be able to multitask and bring in people to deal with all of that. So on COVID, we need to get the virus under control with social distancing, masking. I provoked a discussion today at the Executive Council about how we would do mass vaccinations. The answer is the Department of Health and Human Services isn't real sure how this is going to play out. That's a problem. We need to be thinking about that. We need to get to more regular schools as we move forward. So on the COVID crisis, we need to bring this under control. On the economic crisis, New Hampshire doesn't have a minimum wage. We default to the federal minimum wage. We need to move it to $15 an hour so that our neighbors and friends and other people in our community can have a sustainable standard of living. New Hampshire also has the lowest cap on unemployment. It's $427 per employee, regardless of how many dependents you have, and no matter how much you earned before you lost your job. That can't stay at worst in New England. That needs to improve. On climate change, we need to stop building fossil fuel infrastructure. That's why I was the only candidate so strongly opposed to the Granite Bridge fracked gas $400 million pipeline. That's been pulled. That shows my judgment was right on that project, but we have to be careful that these utilities don't come up with other projects that take us in the wrong direction for decades. And the final crisis that I mentioned was of racial justice. We do have systemic racism in New Hampshire. I don't care that Chris Sununu refuses to recognize it. It affects our law enforcement. It affects our health care outcomes. It affects how economics work in our state. Those are all areas that I'm going to work on if I'm elected governor.
Thank you, Andy. We have just a few minutes left, and so what I'll ask you to do is simply to speak to the citizens of Manchester of anything that you wish, your final thoughts as we come to our closing segment.
I would say to the people of Manchester, we're all in this together. You have a school funding crisis, and it is not your fault. You're stuck in a system that is not sustainable. Someone needs to call out the fact that our school funding system doesn't work, and we need to stop defaulting to the Republican narrative. The property tax is the broadest based tax that we could have. If you live in New Hampshire, you pay the property tax directly or indirectly. Mitt Romney on the lake pays $7 in taxes per thousand. In Manchester, you pay multiples of that. It's not fair. We need a system that will allow Manchester to flourish as the economic engine it should be. If I'm your governor, that's going to happen. Join us. Go to VolinskyNH.com. I'm endorsed by the NEA Teachers Union, 17,000 members, 350.org, Sierra Club on environmental issues, Ben and Jerry on campaign finance honesty issues, and many more. So thank you for this opportunity. Come join us. Be part of this effort to fix some of the problems that are happening and move New Hampshire forward.
Andy, thank you for joining us today. Again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. You've been extraordinary in trying to overcome them, and maybe someday we can do this again in a smoother format in terms of the audio. To the viewers, I've been talking to Executive Councilor Andrew Volinsky, who's running for the seat of New Hampshire governor. Andy, again, thank you so much. Thank you, Executive Councilor Andrew Volinsky, for your time today, and we all wish you good luck on September 8th. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Stay well, be safe, you and Heidi both.
Thank you.
Care.
Thank you very much. in our closing segment today, and again, I'm not the technological genius that some people believe me to be. And to the viewers, thank you for your patience as well as we get through this.
I think I have the repeat times. That
Yeah,
the
by all
show
means.
will air
And let me just tell you what she's talking about. The show will be repeating probably for the next 6 or 7 days, I believe, at different times. You can see the show on Channel 23, local Channel 23 in Manchester. And you can also see it on the website, which I believe is www.manchestertv.org. Heidi, those times, please.
I believe it's Saturday at 8 a.m. Then we go Monday, August 10th at 12 a.m. Monday, August 10th at 9 p.m. Tuesday, 7 p.m.
Thank you. In our final segment today, we're just going to kind of take a look at another issue of great importance, and it's of great importance to any and all candidates, and so it fits very well with our format of Meet the Candidates. The voting and the structure of voting in New Hampshire and across the country is changing and evolving because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Heidi serves on the Election Law Committee in Concord, and she's also ward clerk
Yes.
in Ward 10 in addition to her candidacy for state representative, or incumbent candidacy. So I'm going to turn it over to Heidi to talk a little bit about how we can vote in today's world. Heidi?
Thank you, Connie. I'm encouraging everyone to vote absentee ballots. Absentee application is easy to get to. You can download it from City of Manchester City Clerk's site and just fill it out, mail it back in, and they will mail you out a ballot right away. Mail that ballot back in, and you're done voting. You know, absentee voting and mail-in voting are the same thing. You know that 26 states have, I wrote it down here, allow no excuse absentee voting. We tried to do that in election law. We tried with the bills, but didn't work. 5 states are mail-in voting anyways, all the time. You know, it's safer. Of course, during this pandemic it is. So also another good site to go to is voteinnh.org, and it will help you along with getting your absentee request in. And
Okay, if I could just add a couple of points. I did have a constituent contact me who said that she had gotten the application to send in to get the ballots, because you apply first and then the ballots come to you and then you have to submit the ballots. And she said that there was no checkbox for the COVID-19 excuse. And I believe that's because those were printed prior to.
yes,
So if there's an issue like that, what should the voter do instead of having to print a new application?
disability. Check the disability box. That's what they're calling it now. It's a disability.
Okay.
That's-
Another issue that came up is stamps.
Mhm.
Is it true that 2 stamps are necessary to send the ballot back in?
Yes, I would put 2 stamps on that to send it back in.
Okay, and a constituent also asked me if, obviously you can vote in person at the polls, and obviously you can send in your absentee ballot. Is it possible to vote at City Hall, to walk into City Hall and cast your vote there?
Yes, it is.
So there are 3 possible ways to do
Yes.
that. Just for clarity's sake, some of you who know me and know that I've been involved in several campaigns have seen me at the polls. Typically, I do run in 3 districts, wards 10, 11, and 12. So you'll probably have typically seen me outside one of those polling places, holding my sign, talking to people, getting insights from constituents, and so on. And it's time that I've always treasured. I do enjoy being out there. Sometimes the cold November days kind of bring that a little bit less to the pleasurable level. However, I did send in my absentee ballot application today. We are sitting here masked. We are doing everything socially responsible. And I fear for the poll workers. Every other year I do work in the polls. If I'm not running, I do work in the polls. And there are some marvelous people who step up for very little pay to work the polls and to handle democracy for us. And I fear for them. I fear for anyone that comes out to the polls. I totally understand if you want to go to the polls, if that's an important issue for you, if it's a liberty issue, if it's an issue of of integrity and conscience, that's absolutely fine. I'm sure the polls will be as well run as they've ever been and very COVID conscious, and so that's absolutely fine. But for my money, although I may stand somewhere a block away from the polls and wave my sign in isolation with a mask, I will not be going in to cast my ballot. I find that unsatisfactory in so many ways, but I find the possibility that something I do might contribute to the lack of health or even a death of somebody to be far more unsatisfactory, and so I think that's something that's very important for us to look at. Is there anything else that we should know about?
Just if you go to the City of Manchester City Clerk's elections, you can print off sample ballots for each ward. Which ward do I live in? Well, you just put in your address and up comes what ward you are in, and the polling location, and the election results are usually on there the night of the election, September 8th. Get out and vote by absentee.
As always, it is important for us to have our voices and to cast our ballots. You served on the Election Law Committee this year. Is there any chance that this will become an accepted practice in the future once we hopefully get rid of COVID-19?
I'm hoping it would be, but the governor didn't sign that into law, and we need a new governor.
And I do, as I said, that same constituent that asked me a couple of questions felt put out a bit at having to mark off disability. She said, I am not disabled. The world is disabled. And I think it's a valid point. But to vote, to be part of your country, to be part of your city, to be part of your state, there are a lot of people up and down the ballot. The primary election is a little bit more narrow, although there will be people who are not opposed in a primary on the ballot. But of course, we go to the federal level when we get to the November elections. And so I want to encourage everybody out there to be conscious of what's going on and to be conscious of health and safety. To repeat, I am Connie Van Houten. I am currently a state representative in District 45, representing wards 10, 11, and 12. I serve on the Commerce Committee at this time, which is why I've been throwing the election law questions to Heidi. That doesn't mean that we don't all have some awareness of what's going on globally in the legislature. But my forte, if you will, as a member of that committee is business, insurance, liquor, and I don't mean liquor in just that sense, because we look at laws related to vaping and youth tobacco, which are very important to me. Heidi, what do you basically do on election law beyond just doing things with ballots?
I'm not sure. This is my first term on election law, and I'm in newbie, freshman, and I'm learning a lot. And we hear a lot of new bills come in, and some are very good and some are very bad. But every bill gets heard, and I appreciate your votes. And September 8th and November 3rd. Thank you.
And I think that's the beauty of what happens up in Concord. We are a very large legislature. In the State House alone, there are 400 members. But we do take everything to heart. Every bill does get a hearing. You are easily able to bring your bills to the awareness, or your ideas for bills to the awareness of a state representative, and have those crafted and brought forth. A great deal happens up there that people don't always realize. And I want to actively thank those people who've stepped up to run. There are many, many people running on both sides of the aisle this time around. It is, in many ways, a thankless task. It's not well compensated financially, but in many ways it's a beautiful task, because you do have a chance to shape what's going on in our state and to volunteer for service. I use the word volunteer loosely, but it's not well compensated in terms of money. So as we come to the end of our day, I'd like to say thank you to everyone. There are many people to thank. Our two gubernatorial candidates, Senator Dan Feltes, Executive Counselor Andrew Volinsky. I'd like to thank Heidi Hamer, who is my co-host today and will be my co-host, I believe, in a few other shows. I'd like to thank John Hopwood, who produces and is the person who brings the show to you every week. He gives up some of his time during the election season to bring some candidates to the table. And I would also like to thank those people who are listening to us today and viewing with us today It was a disjointed show in many ways, and I apologize for that. But I think the heart and soul of New Hampshire and of New Hampshire candidacy was definitely showcased today. Thank you for viewing. New Hampshire, stay very safe and stay very healthy, and hopefully you will find a way to vote in a safe and healthy manner. Have a good day, Manchester.